Slavery was a choice, because you either had the choice of death or work. But peep how the white man used death to keep slaves. So they would choose slavery. Africans of the time believed that when you died, you were resurrected to go back and be with your ancestors. So certain slaves chose to just die or run off or commit suicide to go back with their ancestors. There are no real taboos on suicide. What the slave masters would do is they would take the bodies and cremate them or destroy them or cut off the limbs of runaway slaves or slaves who committed suicide to keep them from being able to resurrect and go back and be with their ancestors. So not only did the slave masters take their freedom, they also took away the freedom that they would have in death. And so that forced a lot of slaves to choose to stay in slavery. Understand that slavery started not in America. The process of becoming a slave, it didn't start when you got to America or got to Jamaica or got to somewhere in the Caribbean. Slavery started when you got to the shores in Africa. It actually started the moment that you might have got kidnapped from your village or taken as a prisoner of war. The process for you to become a slave started then. You were broken physically, mentally, and slaves are human beings. So through torture, people would capitulate. Women were raped. People were just broken down mentally, physically, spiritually, emotionally, linguistically unable to communicate with their fellow person because they were from a different tribe. And all that took place in Africa at the slave castles. So prior to you even getting to a place to get on your feet where you think slavery begins in America, and then you got all these choices that you can do, you're dealing with people that might have been in the slave castle in Ghana for 3 or 4 months, malnourished, being beaten, being psychologically tortured, and et cetera, et cetera. So their choices were actually quite few and slim. And then understand a lot of these people that were slaves, rest in peace, they died. They didn't make it through their first 2 years. The lifespan of a slave, once you hit a plantation, was only a matter of a few years. In some cases, a few months, especially places like Brazil. So you got to take that into consideration as well, as how many choices do you have when you don't know what the outlook or what the future is. You don't know where you are. You run off where you're going to go. You can't swim, et cetera, et cetera. You don't know how to pilot a boat. There's a lot of factors which physically and environmentally occur for people to choose that type of lifestyle. It's no different than if you were put as a modern person put into those same positions today. No matter how radical or rebellious a gangster you think that you are, if somebody puts you in a position to be tortured, if that was the case, why do people stay in prison? Right? Because they can't get out that bitch. So, I mean, take all that in consideration and add that to the context. But still, nigga, what the fuck are you talking about?